The children of the night gather at our windows still, pressing pale faces against the glass of our modern world. Listen to them, the children of the night, what music they make. Count Dracula's words echo through more than a century, reminding us that some hungers never fade, some darkness never lifts. In 1897, when Bram Stoker penned these immortal lines, he unleashed more than a monster. He birthed our deepest fears about desire, death, and the price of immortality. Abraham Stoker walks the fog-shrouded streets of Victorian London, his mind churning with shadows and secrets. The Dublin-born theatre manager carries within him the weight of a sickly childhood, bedridden for years, watching life through windows while death whispered at his shoulder. This intimate dance with mortality shapes every word he will write, every fang that will pierce flesh in his imagination. The London of 1897 pulses with electric light and steam engines, yet ancient fears persist in its cobblestone arteries. Stoker inhabits this world of contradictions, science advancing while superstition clings to the edges of reason. Gas lamps flicker against encroaching darkness, much like the fragile flame of human civilization against the eternal night that his Count represents. In the Lyceum Theatre, where Stoker manages the grand productions of Henry Irving, drama bleeds into reality. The actor's commanding presence, his ability to transform into otherworldly characters, plants seeds in Stoker's imagination. Irving's theatrical magnetism becomes the template for supernatural charisma, the power to entrance, to command, to possess. Blood flows through Stoker's narrative like a river of communion, transforming the sacred into the profane. Each puncture wound becomes a grotesque baptism, each feeding a perverted sacrament. The vampire's bite inverts Christianity's promise of eternal life, offering instead eternal hunger. The blood that should save becomes the blood that damns drop by crimson drop. Victorian propriety trembles before the Count's arrival, its rigid moral framework cracking like ice in spring. Stoker's monster doesn't merely drain blood, he awakens desires that polite society has buried beneath layers of respectability. The vampire's kiss unleashes the animal self that civilization has worked so desperately to contain and control. Lucy Westenra transforms from innocent maiden to predatory seductress, her metamorphosis a mirror of Victorian anxieties about female sexuality. Her undeath represents the terror of the uncontrolled feminine, beautiful, dangerous, insatiable. In her crimson lips and hollow eyes, Stoker captures the age's fear of women who might choose their own desires over society's expectations. The phonograph and typewriter emerge as weapons against ancient evil, modernity's tools employed to document and combat timeless darkness. Stoker embraces the cutting edge of communication technology, suggesting that knowledge shared becomes power multiplied. Yet even these mechanical marvels seem fragile against the primal force of the undead. Professor Van Helsing arrives bearing the weight of accumulated wisdom, his Dutch accent carrying the authority of old-world knowledge. He bridges the gap between medieval superstition and modern science, understanding that some truths transcend rational explanation. His character embodies Stoker's belief that defeating evil requires both ancient wisdom and contemporary innovation. The hammer drives through the vampire's heart with the force of absolute moral certainty, yet even this final act carries troubling implications. Violence becomes purification, murder becomes mercy. Stoker's heroes embrace brutality to preserve purity, raising questions about the thin line between salvation and savagery that echo through our modern world. Sexual energy permeates every page like incense in a cathedral, forbidden and intoxicating. The vampire's bite becomes a metaphor for desires that Victorian society dared not name, penetration without procreation, pleasure without consequence. Stoker's genius lies in making the erotic simultaneously thrilling and terrifying, desire and damnation intertwined. The castle perches on its cliff like a stone scream against the sky, its Gothic spires reaching toward heaven while its foundations sink into hell. Stoker's architecture becomes psychology made manifest, the mind's dark corners given form and substance, Every corridor leads deeper into the maze of human fear and fascination. Mina Harker stands as the new woman of the 1890s, her intelligence and independence both celebrated and feared. She embodies the emerging feminist consciousness while remaining vulnerable to ancient predators. Her character captures the tension between progress and peril, the cost of stepping beyond traditional boundaries into uncharted territory. The novel arrives as the British Empire reaches its zenith, yet Stoker's monster comes from the margins, from the conquered territories of Eastern Europe. The Count represents the return of the repressed, the colonised striking back at the coloniser. His invasion of London reverses the flow of imperial power, bringing darkness to the heart of civilization. Technology fails when confronted with timeless evil, telegraphs falling silent as supernatural forces gather strength. Stoker understands that progress carries its own vulnerabilities, that our most advanced tools become useless against adversaries who operate by different rules. The vampire's power grows precisely because it exists outside modern understanding. The ship Demeter arrives at Whitby with its cargo of death, its captain lashed to the wheel in a final act of desperate duty. This maritime horror sequence captures the isolation of the human condition, the way evil can transform sanctuary into trap. The vessel becomes a floating coffin, carrying contamination across the very waters that once protected. Sleep becomes the gateway to violation, dreams the landscape where monsters feed. Stoker's vampires attack during humanity's most vulnerable hours, when consciousness recedes and defences crumble. The bedroom, sanctuary of rest and intimacy, transforms into a battlefield where souls hang in the balance between salvation and damnation. The cross burns vampire flesh like concentrated sunlight, yet its power depends entirely on the faith of the wielder. Stoker's religious symbolism cuts both ways: protection for believers, mere metal for skeptics. This conditional salvation reflects the crisis of faith that marked the late Victorian era, when science challenged traditional certainties. Garlic hangs in kitchen windows like aromatic prayers, folk wisdom standing guard against sophisticated evil. Stoker honours the power of simple remedies, suggesting that sometimes the most ancient protections prove most effective. The humble herb becomes a shield against cosmic darkness, peasant knowledge trumping academic theory. The Count's reflection refuses to appear in mirrors, his absence more terrifying than his presence. Stoker creates a monster defined by negation: no reflection, no shadow, no soul. This void at the centre of existence becomes the ultimate horror, the fear that beneath our surface selves lies nothing but hungry emptiness. Time moves differently for immortals, centuries passing like seasons in a single endless year. Stoker's vampire experiences duration rather than progression, accumulating experience without growth. This temporal displacement creates existential vertigo, the horror of consciousness trapped in unchanging flesh while the world transforms around it. The novel's epistolary structure fragments narrative into multiple voices, each character contributing pieces to a larger puzzle. Stoker democratizes storytelling, suggesting that truth emerges not from single authority, but from collective testimony. This multiplicity of perspectives mirrors the complexity of modern experience, where meaning requires constant reconstruction. London's fog becomes a character in its own right, concealing predators and confusing prey. Stoker's atmosphere thick with menace, every shadow potentially lethal. The city's weather becomes psychological landscape, external environment, reflecting internal states of fear and uncertainty that grip his characters. The novel emerges from fin de siècle anxieties about degeneration and decay, fears that civilization might be sliding backward into barbarism. Stoker's monster embodies these concerns, an ancient evil that corrupts rather than destroys, spreading contamination through the very act of survival. The vampire becomes evolution in reverse. Medical science struggles to comprehend supernatural pathology, doctors finding themselves inadequate to diagnose otherworldly ailments. Stoker chronicles the limits of rational inquiry, the points where empirical method breaks down before inexplicable phenomena. his characters must choose between comfortable ignorance and disturbing truth. The novel's influence spreads through popular culture like a beneficial contagion, inspiring countless adaptations and interpretations. Stoker's creation transcends its original context, becoming a mirror for each generation's fears and desires. The vampire evolves while remaining essentially unchanged, ancient hunger wearing contemporary masks. Freud's theories of repression and sublimation find perfect expression in Stoker's narrative, though the novel predates psychoanalysis by years. The vampire represents the return of repressed desires, the id unleashed upon the superego of Victorian society. Stoker intuitively grasps psychological truths that academic theory would later systematize. The novel's treatment of immigration and xenophobia resonates with contemporary debates about borders and belonging. The Count's invasion of Britain reflects anxieties about foreign contamination, the fear that outsiders might corrupt native purity. Stoker's monster becomes a lens through which to examine the dark side of nationalist sentiment. Each adaptation of the novel reveals the fears and fascinations of its era, from German expressionist cinema to modern television series. Stoker's vampire serves as a cultural barometer, reflecting societal changes while maintaining its essential, terrifying appeal. The monster evolves with the times while remaining timelessly menacing. The novel's religious imagery operates on multiple levels, from surface Christianity to deeper spiritual metaphors. Stoker explores themes of redemption and damnation without committing to specific theological positions. His vampire exists in the space between belief and doubt, challenging readers to confront their own spiritual assumptions. The relationship between predator and prey becomes uncomfortably intimate, feeding sessions resembling passionate encounters more than violent attacks. Stoker blurs the line between violation and seduction, making his readers complicit in the vampire's appetites. The horror lies not in the monster's alienness, but in its terrible familiarity. Technology and tradition clash throughout the narrative, old wisdom proving more reliable than new invention. Stoker's characters succeed by combining ancient knowledge with modern methods, suggesting that progress requires dialogue between past and present. The vampire's defeat comes through synthesis rather than replacement. The novel's gender dynamics reflect Victorian tensions about women's changing roles in society. Female characters oscillate between empowerment and vulnerability, their strength making them both more effective against evil and more attractive to it. Stoker captures the double-edged nature of liberation, its opportunities and its dangers. The Count's aristocratic bearing masks his parasitic nature, nobility revealed as sophisticated predation. Stoker critiques class privilege by making his vampire a literal bloodsucker, one who maintains his position through the exploitation of others. The monster becomes a grotesque parody of aristocratic entitlement. Modern readers discover new layers of meaning in Stoker's text, each generation finding fresh relevance in his themes. The novel's treatment of disease and contagion speaks to contemporary concerns about pandemics and public health. The vampire's spreading influence mirrors modern fears about viral transmission and social breakdown. The novel's exploration of identity and transformation anticipates postmodern concerns about the stability of the self. Stoker's characters face the possibility of fundamental change, the fear that core identity might be more fragile than assumed. The vampire bite becomes a metaphor for any experience that alters one's essential nature. The relationship between civilization and wilderness runs throughout the narrative, domesticated spaces constantly threatened by wild intrusion. Stoker's monster represents the return of the untamed, the reminder that human order exists in precarious balance with natural chaos. The vampire embodies the wildness that civilization seeks to suppress. The novel's treatment of addiction and dependency creates uncomfortable parallels with contemporary substance abuse crises. The vampire's need for blood mirrors human struggles with compulsive behavior, the way dependency can transform personality and destroy relationships. Stoker's monster becomes a metaphor for any force that enslaves the will. Digital age readers find new meaning in Stoker's exploration of networks and connectivity, the way evil spreads through established channels of communication. The vampire's ability to influence others across distances anticipates modern concerns about online manipulation and digital contamination. The novel's themes prove remarkably prescient. The children of the night continue their eternal vigil, reminding us that some hungers transcend time and technology. Stoker's vampire endures because it represents fundamental human fears about mortality, sexuality, and the price of desire. In our age of artificial intelligence and genetic manipulation, the question remains, what makes us human, and what are we willing to sacrifice to transcend our limitations? The Count's crimson smile suggests that some bargains extract a price we cannot afford to pay, yet cannot resist making.